And we're live.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Dieter. And thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. I'm Captain Ron. This is Fearless Flight Live for the week for Tuesday night. I almost said April, February 18th, 2025. Holy cow.
Yeah.
I know what just passed through my mind is we who are getting older. All these years are like, man, I'm from the 50s, and in the 60s, and we didn't even think that in these terms. I remember getting up to close to retirement, and it was when I was in the last millennium, and I would look at 2007, and I would say, oh man, that's so far off. And now I'm 17 and a half years past that. It's unbelievable. So anyway, pickleball every day. I highly recommend it. So anyway, so thanks for Dieter, and so we're here to talk tonight. Geez, what could we talk about after last week? Oh my gosh, people are bouncing airplanes off the ground and
Hmm.
not doing very well at it. So anyway, welcome everybody. Let me formally open this and stop number 3, and we should
So,
be
yep.
sharing now. Okay. Uh, there we go. All right. So, welcome everybody. Fearless Flight Live, our weekly live show where we come on and we talk to people, hopefully help people who are deep in the throes of flight anxiety, trying to get over their fear of flying, and or people who know somebody. We have a lot of people who support people out there that are afraid to fly, and pat yourselves on the back for being so generous with that. And then just talking about the airline industry. We probably have a few people going to show up to with the thought that we'll talk a little bit about what happened in your backyard, right, Dieter, up in Toronto. So
There we go.
anyway, yeah. First thing we mention is our Birds of a Feather group. It's a private Facebook group open to anybody. Please join. And if you're new to the group, leave a message or post on there. Share with the rest of the group and get support on demand. It's just a great group of people.
Mhm.
You meet the nicest people hiding out from flying. That's what I've
Yes.
noticed over the
And you know
years.
what? We gotta go. Hurley, I'm with you. Hurley says, "Oh goodness, all these incidents lately." So yeah,
Yeah.
there is
We're
some
gonna
Canadian content there we gotta talk about today.
Yep. So
Sure.
speaking of that, we're gonna do a little update on the Toronto crash. Talk about what we know, and I don't know any more than you know, but I've always got an opinion. That's what makes me a good captain. May not be right, but never in doubt. And our special guest, Arnold Burnett. Oh boy, we haven't seen or heard from Arnold yet. So if he doesn't show, no big deal. We've got some other things to talk about. But if he doesn't, we'll certainly have him on as soon as possible. And for those of you who may not remember or not be aware of Arnold, Arnold is a gosh, I wish I knew his exact title, but he's at MIT Sloan Institute, and he's a mathematician, and Arnold specializes in probabilities and statistics. And he himself was a fearful flyer, and he started to work on his fear by getting into the numbers. And he's one of, if not the leading expert on the probabilities of dying, being injured in an airplane crash, among other things. And I first heard about him back in the year that I retired, and started following him. And then about 6, 7 years ago, I had the courage to write him and found out he was just a super human being, and he embraced my questions. And we met face to face, and he's even been made live appearances to our class and been online a couple times. So I'm going to have him weigh and no better time than the things that are going in the industry right now. So, and then I put together a little program here called "Don't Let Aviation Headlines Hijack Your Peace of Mind." So, we like to talk about the technical things, but what we want to talk about is the main reason that you're here joining us, and that is not to let your flight anxiety rule your life. One-on-one classes is just a reminder. In LA, we're still working on it. But yeah, we're having trouble booking the date, so we might have to push it back. But we'll come out with something definitive, hopefully here in the next week. And then we'll mention our live monthly coaching webinar that we've got coming up on Thursday night. It's a fun class. So if you haven't considered attending and you don't know what else to do, that's a great place to start with us. And then your questions, looks like they got cut off on the slide a little bit.
Well,
so
I think the next slide you're gonna pull up is the birds of a feather, right? Or did we already go through that one?
I did that. We can go back to it though.
So I just Megan actually has a question, and let's just address this. I have just only now seen the post. Megan is asking, can you mention to leave political posts off and name calling? And absolutely, Megan, and I say this for two reasons, but the first reason is politics these days cause a lot of anxiety in and of themselves, and we really want this group, Birds of a Feather, be all about the number one anxiety that brought you here, which is your fear of flying. And while they are definitely in some ways connected, and I recognize, I think that post mentioned, potential cuts to the FAA. I'm not sure if that's actually going to happen or not, but yes, I will definitely go in there. And I will definitely encourage all of you, if you do have political views that you want to share with people, I'm sure there's a lot of Facebook groups out there. Please join those groups where those topics, are appreciated and encouraged. What we do here is we really want to provide a safe space to support each other with the focus of how you can overcome your fear of flying, how you can be supported in that. And we want to keep it that way. So we didn't really have too many challenging posts, but this is definitely a time, Hurley says too, agreed, that's something that unites us, and we need to focus on that. And that's really, I wholeheartedly agree. And I'm sure, Ron, you have something to say about that as well.
Oh, just you said it well. Really, we just don't. I mean, it wouldn't matter with me what the subject is, and I have strong opinions of my own. But I really, really, really hope that what comes across for me is, it may sound corny, but the love and affection that I have for people trying to do life. And that's the way I treat people for the most part. And I would love if that shows through. Dieter and I share this attitude. So we definitely don't want to add angst that we could talk about somewhere else. We'll talk about the air traffic control issues and stuff as they come up. They've been short for many years now. That is not something that has been a fault of either party. It's like pilot shortage stuff. There are and there are not enough people out there. It starts at Social Security. There's not enough people pay it in to keep my benefits coming out. It's a demographics issue, and that's why we're having trouble with hiring. The military's having trouble recruiting. The air traffic controllers are having trouble.
Flight attendants,
pilots, flight attendants. Yeah, it's a shortage of manpower out there. So, but the thing that I would like to maybe help put that to rest is the rules don't change for how many airplanes can be in the air and all that. And true, there was one controller on duty that night when there could have been, I will say.
You're talking about the DC crash.
I'm sorry. Yes, the DCA crash, the one in Washington D.C. And as much as we know now about that, it wasn't the sad thing is the Army helicopter, when he had traffic pointed out to him, and it was at night, and he said, "I've got the traffic in sight." That changes the entire rules. He is now responsible for separating himself from the other airplane, who did not necessarily have him, obviously didn't have him in sight. And the controller then takes away, that takes his energy and puts it back on the departing traffic and the landing traffic on the runway over there. So it certainly might have made a favor, but there were other things involved, like the lights and the diffusion and the night vision scope and all that. And if nothing else, he may have had the wrong airplane identified. And so he didn't hit the one that he identified, but unfortunately that wasn't the one that the tower was talking about. So, okay. Yeah. So let's just be really nice to each other. Okay. And cause we all want to get over this stuff and not ruin our lives here. Okay. All right. So that's our show for tonight. So the Toronto crash, an update. I saw Dieter forwarded me the video from the local TV station up in Toronto. I had not seen until earlier today, I had not seen the actual touchdown or impact, I guess would be a more a fair way to describe that. And what it looked like was, it wasn't this kind of an airplane. This is a Boeing 737. It was one smaller. It was an RJ, Embraer, I believe. Anyway, and when it touched down, it looked like the reports were the runway was clean, no accumulation of snow or ice, so it wasn't slippery. There was no precipitation in the air. I think the snow had stopped, so it was clear skies pretty much, and everything. Yeah, a beautiful day all in all, except for cold and windy, and the crosswind was not a factor. And it looked to me, with my 50 some years of aviation experience, it looked to me like they just had, the term is they had too big of sink rate as they touched down on the runway. And you can see almost immediately, it looks like the right gear collapsed. Had both gear collapsed, it might have been different. But since the right one collapsed, I'll put it on like this. You can imagine when that gear collapsed like that, then it allowed the wingtip to hit and dig in, and then it caused it to dig in and then tip over, and the momentum snapped the right wing off and left it some distance behind. And then the airplane continued to roll, and it ended up upside down. And you can see, because last night they didn't show that view, but then you can see from this side of the airplane, you can see that the wing was still on over here. Luck, definitely luck. When they got rid of the right wing, they got rid of a lot of the fuel. That's a good thing, because the sparks and all that certainly gave the opportunity for a fire to start. And there was some fire. Some, I believe, on the engines was probably due to the residual fuel in the engine after they lost the wing, but they did have the fuel supply from the left wing there. And then the flight attendants did a marvelous job getting everybody out. And you can just try to imagine you're sitting there, a flight attendant, absolutely nothing going through your mind about what's going to happen in the next 15 seconds. Changes your life. The next thing they knew is all hell broke loose, and they're hanging upside down. Everybody in that airplane was hanging from their seatbelt. And I believe what'll pan out, because I heard that they let anybody who went to the hospital, they discharged everybody but 2 people, I believe. But
and one was actually a child. I'm not sure how.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But
imagine you're upside down. The good news is it's an RJ, so you don't have as big of ceilings or high ceilings, because you look down and when you undo that belt, there's nothing to hang on to. And you're just going to drop like a sack of potatoes. Probably the best thing is they had the overhead bins, which provided a little bit of cushion. So that they may have been able to bounce off of that. I heard some of the people saying that they walked out over the overhead bins. And then when they got to the door, of course, the emergency exit slide normally would flop out from the floor. It's up here, so it's of no value. And fortunately, they're upside down, so it's really just a step over the exit, and they're on the ground out there. And so there's a lot of things that, oh my gosh, a lot of things that could have gone wrong. Had they had a fire, it would have been dramatically different. So we're just grateful.
Can I just say one thing that and it was what's that, a 900 series? So they have. So they had about 80 people, 76 plus 4 crew. And the amazing thing is, and I really didn't know this, But there was actually an incident like that years and years and years ago. And one of the learnings of that incident way back is that these seats have to be rated for 16G.
Yep.
So they are so strong that they can literally withstand this flipping.
Yeah.
They would have,
Imagine if even one of those had broken loose.
yeah.
Now you got a 300-pound with the person in the seat in there piece of ballistics going around the cockpit, which could have killed people and done all kinds of things.
So they just, those are the kinds of things that you never really think of or even appreciate the fact that somebody actually learned from an accident a long, long time ago where seats did come loose because they weren't rated for that amount of force, and so therefore they did break loose and they did go through the cabin. That was one of the things that I listened to.
Yeah, it's a great point. And two things about that. One, they're not just bolted to a piece of aluminum on the floor. No. I mean, it's structurally tied down to the main frame of the airplane. And the other thing is, you all probably remember that we've highlighted from the Miracle on the Hudson, for example, 35 findings to that, 30 of which applied to other airplanes, accidents, and situations. So that's the beauty of aviation, is that the forensic investigation that goes on and the improvements transcend any particular accident, and that's how you get to a place where you can go to where you don't have fatal accidents. And unfortunately, they continue to happen, and we're probably looking at both of these, some aspect of human error in both of these things. So we'll find out, and you'll be the first to know after
because
us.
we did get a couple of questions, and even there's a question here. They're not really connected other than a human being may or may not have been, involved. And
exactly,
I know we want everybody else to be perfect, but, just looking at my own life, I can't really be honest and say that I'm perfect every single day. And I know we expect we expect perfection in such a case. But as far as the technology went, everything was really working the way it should. It could have been. I mean, it's hard, right? There's a lot of snow there. Maybe they just didn't see it properly. Who knows? I'm sure they will be able to dig into that. Same with the crash in Washington, and same with that plane up in Alaska. It's just there's a lot of airplanes in the air, and if unfortunately, it doesn't look like Arnold is going to be able to come on. But what I was trying to point out is, if you have so many aircraft in the air at one point, the likelihood isn't like it's getting greater. It's just the statistics flatten out. So I remember years ago when Amazon came into the space of cloud storage, right? Because today everything is in cloud, and they were the first ones that offered 99.999999999 7, 8, 9, I think 9 nines after, because when this thing has to work every single day, every single hour, every single minute, that uptime, even if it's like 0.1%, that's actually ending up being worth something to someone that relies on their cloud storage to be accessible all the time. Like
aviation. And what you're talking about, I think, is they have to have a system that if one part goes down, the other one, they have to have the data stored somewhere else, so that they never ever you can't get to your data, or they would lose it.
Exactly, that redundancy is
redundancy
playing a role, and I think we always talk about that. That's why in aviation you often have so many systems that have 2 extra redundancies. So there's 3 ways, right, to deal with something. So
and 3 of the questions that have come up, I've got in the material that we're going to go over tonight. So it's just it's perfect timing here. So okay. Good news. Had a person that I coached a couple of weeks ago. She made a trip to Aruba. It was really weighing heavily on her, and she made it. She couldn't make the show tonight, but she's going to be a guest in the future. And so she got this. I tell you, I get these, and those of you who write to me, I encourage everybody, call me, write me, text me, whatever, but don't ever stop, because this makes my whole day. And I try to share it with Dieter as much as possible too. And this is just one of many. But says, hello, Capt Ron. We spoke over a week ago, just updating. I used all the tools from our conversation, your book and the videos, and did great. I did cry a couple of times. Crying is allowed. And my husband made me look into his eyes and calm me right down. That's something I teach couples how to do when people are having a moment. And she was going to Aruba, down in the Caribbean there. Flight to Aruba was perfect and smooth. The flight back to Boston Sunday was bumpy. We're glad that she got a little bit of practice in there. Had issues and delays. However, the pilot and the attendants were unbelievable. I encouraged her to meet them personally and do early boarding. And they were informative and calming, and happy to say that I'll be flying again. Well, we're glad that was Christine, and we're glad, Christine, that you did that. And thanks for sharing it with us. It's really, really super. So we'll get some more details from her when we get her online.
Can I just because there's a couple of questions about mass firings at the FAA. So as far as, okay, I'm not American, but as far as I'm aware of, I think it's somewhere only, and I say only, but it's only in the neighborhood of 300 people.
Out of 45,000 or something like that.
Yeah, out of 45,000. So all I'm saying is, again, what Ron's presentation is gonna be is, don't let those headlines, because they're designed. I hate to break it to you guys. In journalism, there is a golden rule, and it's called, if it bleeds, it leads, which means, and if it doesn't bleed, then maybe we can make it sound like it's bleeding. And I'm not saying that it's great to let people go. I honestly don't know that much about it, but I do know that it's only about 300 to 400 people, somewhere in there. And to answer Kaviani's question, I'm sure that all airlines, ATC and the FAA, they're all experimenting, meaning seeing where AI can be an extra redundancy, or can actually even increase some of the efficiency and safety. But again, this is all pretty new, and just because AI works for your kid that has to do a test in high school, when a system is responsible for lives, you don't want to just sign it over to the AI without having tested it under circumstances that weed out as much as possible in terms of what could go wrong. Okay.
Right. And here's another way to look at this. Okay. So 300, let's just say that in Toronto or in New York Center, the big center controllers, that there was such a bad snowstorm that nobody could get to work and the facility is empty. Guess what? Nobody's going to fly through there that day. Exactly. You see, that's what's hard to imagine. We think in terms of automobile transportation, and if the snow comes, it's sluggish and it's slushy, and people skid and they run into each other and all that. That's not the airlines. You don't get to take off without a clearance, and if they don't have the adequate staffing to man the stations and all that, it is. And like Dieter, I don't know where it's going to end up with the personnel and all that, but no matter what the rule were, if it was a sick out, if it was the flu, no matter what it was, if they don't have the people to fill the positions, it affects the amount of airplanes that can be in the system. if you've flown at all in the last 10 years, you know that there have been computer glitches, sometimes in the system that sends the weather reports to the dispatchers, which we really don't even need in a perfect world. But if they can't get it, they can't do the releases. And you sit on the ground there, you look up, the skies are clear, there's not a cloud in the sky, and the airplane's going to go, because the system is to that way. When I first started, we could switch to manual if the computers went down. We can't do that anymore. We need everything working. And so I hope that puts some of your anxiety to rest on being up there and they fire everybody or they lay everybody off. If they were to do that and the staffing changes, the amount of traffic that the air traffic controllers can handle changes as well. So, all right.
Our rules for all this.
But keep those cards and letters coming. Okay. And speaking of what Dieter was alluding to, don't let aviation headlines ruin your day. Okay. Ruin your peace of mind. Think about it. Whenever we have an incident or an accident like we've had in the last couple of weeks, your body might as well be back in the caveman era. Okay. And that means that it perceives danger on some level. It doesn't have to be real, but the feelings that you get are real. I've always said to people, that your feelings when you get anxious are real. It's just that the perceived threat is just that. It's a perception and it's not a reality. Okay. And just know that your brain is taking control over you. And that's what makes you feel out of control. So what's the ultimate way to get over your fear of flying is to find out and surrender to what you have control over. And that is this thing up here. All right. So tonight we're gonna just touch on. We're gonna do this in much more detail on Thursday night. We're gonna touch on why flight anxiety explodes every time there's an accident or incident in the media, and we'll give you a couple of practical techniques to manage it. And we'll touch on how your brain reacts to fear, how to change anxious thought patterns, and strategies to stay calm before and during flights. If this hadn't happened, and many of you would have been just as nervous as you were other times. All right. So again, don't let the accidents ruin your peace of mind. Why does our brain fixate on aviation accidents? Well, we're wired to pay attention to danger because it helped our ancestors survive, and we're drawn to negative news even when it doesn't impact us directly. That's because we've got this radar that's always at work, trying to give us some semblance of feeling in control to the threats that are every day in the world. And we do that by being wired that way. And as I said, the main problem is it's like a smoke detector. It doesn't matter whether it's smoke or non-smoke. It doesn't know the difference between a real and an imagined threat. And the alarm system goes off just the same. Like I said, negative news is like flypaper to us because, and then there's another thing called confirmation bias, where if you're already inherently worried about flying, now you'll look out into the world, into the media, and you'll find things that support that bias. Okay. And you've got to, that's why education is such a big part of this. And when it comes to aviation accidents, however, our brain's tendency to look for danger patterns can reinforce flight anxiety unnecessarily. What does that mean? That means as we started to evolve to get up into the prefrontal cortex, as it became larger and larger and part of our human system, what happened is our ancestors began to be able to look out and look for patterns in their environment. And that's what we call connecting the dots. So every one of you are likely trying to look at the DCA crash, the crash maybe of the medevac airplane that crashed in Philadelphia, the one up in Alaska, and some of them escape me, and now the Toronto crash, and your brain is working overtime. It's trying to say what's going on. When you listen to the media, what's the first words out of their mouth? Is there a pattern here? Okay. No, there's no pattern. Not, at least not one we can see. The Maxes, that's a legitimate time when they saw a pattern, and they had 2 crashes, and that was the end of the max for 2 years. Okay, but there's no, other than what Dieter said, there may be human error involved in these crashes, but other than that, there's nothing connecting them. So it's just as, matter of fact, it's safer to get on the airplane now than it was yesterday, because you got more people and their vigilance is up. Okay, the fact I mentioned last week, the fact that we hadn't had a fatal accident in the U.S. for 15 years made it more interesting when it happened. So it's terrible, especially for the people and the families, but it's a reality of life. Okay, I got this little kind of a analogy here. Just like unhealthy food affects your body, constant exposure to negative media about aviation affects your mindset. So you take great care in what you put in your body. Take just as great care at what you put in your mind. Okay, and moderation in both is the key. Avoid consuming too much accident-related content, and instead replace it with positive and educational aviation content. So stick to the experts. You can't ignore it. It's going to be on the news every time there's a nuance of findings. They're going to put it out there. They're going to go back and revisit the crash and all that. But you want to try to limit yourself. I'm not saying put your head in the sand. It's not about that either, but it's be very careful about leaning in too far and getting and falling into the soup, and always make a point to get the facts from a reliable source. And now these are some of the things that I recommend all the time. You're not going to see anything specifically different from the fact that we have some crashes that we're talking about. So these are track your thoughts like you would have died. I know when I'm successful losing weight, it's because I'm actually logging what I'm eating during the day. Otherwise, I have a Tootsie Roll here, a piece of strawberry cheesecake over there, and over here. And pretty soon, if I don't write them down, they didn't exist, but they show up on the scale in the near future. All right. So I recommend journaling, and a couple of things you can do with journaling. Just carry a little notepad of any sort. And one of the things you can do is write down what your thoughts are. If you're sitting there at home minding your own business and you start to think about the Toronto crash and anything from what it must have been like for those people going through that, what it must be like to be around the crash scene or anything like that, or are you going to be safe, or what don't we know and all that, write it down. The first thing to do is let it go out your body through your hand. And then, I recommend doing it with your non-preferred hand. So if you're right-handed, put it in your left hand and at least journal some of that. All right. And write down your obsessive fears to identify patterns in your behavior. Forget about looking for patterns in the accidents and how they might be related. Look for patterns in what shows up in your mind, what you pay attention to. Remember, mindfulness is about, first and foremost, paying attention to where your attention is. Okay. Use your non-dominant hand, which I touched on before, and challenge irrational thoughts with logical responses. And that's where we can come in to support you. We're more than willing to do that. Okay. So the journaling can be a real good way to not let it not engage, but to engage in a very, very positive way. All right. Slow down your thinking. How do you do that? The first thing you do is you start by deliberately slowing down your breathing. When you're anxious, your thoughts can race out of control, and that reinforces fear. It actually starts this loop, and you keep getting yourself amped up. Deliberately slowing down your thinking by journaling or focusing on positive aviation facts helps regain a sense of control and balance. And I was interviewed. I've had 4 media interviews in the last week. So, I'm not saying this to be facetious, but business is good right now, that we're getting a lot of media attention, and it's unfortunate, but I'm flattered when somebody comes, because I like to put the word out there, and let people know that this is nothing out of the ordinary. All right. So you don't have anything to breathe. You didn't grab a drinking straw when you went through the food court. Get a 6-sack out of the seat back in front of you, and do just like they advertise. If the oxygen masks should appear from the ceiling, take this and cover your nose and your mouth In for 4 and out for 6. And slowing down to that managed rate of breathing will help to reharmonize your sympathetic nervous system that's there to get you amped up in the event of some kind of emergency. And it'll activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps you calm down when you no longer need to do it. And that's the problem. Many of you have if the sympathetic nervous system is the accelerator on your like on your car, and the parasympathetic is the brake, you've got one foot on the accelerator, one on the brake, and your body says, you got to make up your mind. I can't do both at the same time. Okay. So breathing helps do that. And here's a little bit more about the breathing. It directly affects your nervous system. It is the one thing that is both involuntary and voluntary to the extent that you can slow it down if you need to. And when you slow down your breathing, you activate the body's relaxation response. That's that parasympathetic nervous system cue. Breathing techniques such as using a straw or breathing into a bag, like I just demonstrated, can help re-regulate the oxygen levels. And it's not even so much the oxygen. When you breathe too fast, you've heard me talk about the risk is hyperventilation, where you're actually breathing out too much carbon dioxide. So that's why you do this. So you can rebreathe the carbon dioxide and you won't get lightheaded, or you won't feel tingly in your fingers and toes. All right. And then choose your focus intentionally. Pay attention to where your attention is. Instead of allowing your brain to focus on worst case scenarios, shift your attention to positive aviation experiences. And we got the harmonizer. If you've done coaching with me, you're going to get a detailed summary. You might have opted for a custom NeuroSync guided visualization that is addressed for your specific things. It's like taking Capt Ron with you and having me in your ear when you get anxious. Watch success stories of others overcoming their fear of flying. That can help rewire your own thinking pattern. And one of the things that people do, focus on the prize when you get there. Take a look at some travel documentaries. Make fantasy. Imagine where you want to go in the world. All right. And when you do this, you're recognizing your brain's pattern-seeking instinct, and you're purposely intervening on that. Okay. And these are the things that you can do to keep your focus in tension and under your power. And final thoughts: overcoming anxiety is a process that requires intentional effort. That's the thing that most people, when they come to me, they don't realize. They think that they're trapped by some automatic function over which they have no control. You do have control, but it's learning what that control is that you have. And if you consistently practice these techniques, you can reduce your fear and you can regain confidence in flying. Yeah, this is going to undermine your confidence, this whole deal in Toronto and the DC-8 crash and these other incidents, but you can get it back. And every time you challenge your anxiety, you strengthen new thought patterns that support a clear way of thinking. Let me put this one up here, just to put it in perspective. And Dieter touched on this as well. How many flights occur worldwide each year, do you think? I'll wait for you to put an answer there, and we'll go back to the main room.
And we do have a couple of questions afterwards too, Ron.
Okay, yep, we're gonna get to those. Okay, and the correct answer is 40 million. 40 million flights every year. Holy cow! And
that's a lot of flights.
That's a lot of flights. That alone should help you assimilate the fact that when you get up in the morning, if you don't see a fatal crash somewhere, that should register with you. And how long do you go before you see that? Okay. All right. We just want to remind everybody, this coming Thursday, February 20th, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, we're going to take back the control. So we're going to continue on this theme of taking control over what you have and working on your fears of losing control while you're flying. And then we'll have the encore edition on Saturday morning, February 22nd at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. So please join us. If you're tired of feeling anxious every time you board or just think about flying, join us. And if you struggle with fear of losing control while you're flying, this month we're going to do a deep dive into and do some proven strategies that work for people just like Christine, the little feedback note that I got today. If you want to be like Christine, come and join us, okay? And we really, really, really value your attendance, and we want you to bring those questions. And speaking of questions, Dieter.
Yeah, and before we go to, again, a more technical oriented question, if you're new here, you may not have heard us say this yet. It's not just cute, it's actually true. And that is, the pain in your brain is not about the plane. It's not about that accident. It's not about the string of issues that just happened. Because if you think this through, 40 million a year, that's about 110,000 flights every single day. That's insane. That's just crazy how, especially, and unfortunately Arnold didn't make it. I'm sure we have him back either next week or shortly thereafter. He can really kind of hit home that it is irrational. It doesn't mean it's not real for you. Please don't hear me say that the fear is not real. It's very real, but it is irrational in the sense that you going out to drive wherever you're going today, tomorrow, have a much higher likelihood to be in an accident than if you were to fly every day for the next year, which I wish I could be so lucky. But here the question, though. The question
is... second. And the author of The Pain in Your Brain is not about the plane, is having a birthday tomorrow. His name is Tom, and I'm probably one of the only ones. It's over 20 years ago. Tom was one day he had the light go on. And he said, I get it. The pain in my brain is not about the plane. So anyway, so we'll all wish Tom a happy birthday, even though
is that Tom Rash?
Yep, Tom Rash. Yep.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, can you explain, please, what does it mean to properly flare an aircraft prior to touchdown, as well as the training required to do so? So,
love it. Somebody talked about ground effect today, and
yes.
I thought,
yeah,
oh man,
and
this is a dilemma. I never know how far to go down the rabbit hole, but we'll try to come up with some terms that make sense to somebody. So when the airplane gets closer to the ground, imagine that some of the air is going over the wing, and some of the air, you can, like that, you're deflecting and it's going down, right? You're at a nose high altitude in an airplane, and the wind hits this and it's thrown down and it bounces off the ground. Well, when you get a certain height over the runway, and it happens to be 1/2 of the wingspan. So when this airplane is within this distance to this distance above the runway, it's now being supported somewhat by the cushion of air called ground effect, okay? So when we come down, we're coming down final, we may be descending about between 700 and 1,000 feet per minute, depending on the winds and the ground speed and all that. What that means is every minute we're gonna descend. If I said 1,000, I meant 100. It's between 700 and 1,000 feet per minute, and it doesn't seem like much, but when you get close to the ground, it is noticeable, right? And this is what you learn as a rookie pilot. You start to get a picture for the airplane in which you're flying, and because you can't look right down at the runway, you don't have any depth perception. You'd smash into the ground too hard, or you'd flare way too high up above the runway. But that's from experience. And every time I check out in a new airplane, part of my training is to just get that picture looking out the window when I want to start the flare. And then as I start to, oops, I got to keep it in front of me here. Yeah. When I start to flare, a flare is when I gradually raise the nose, but the airspeed is starting to decay. So let's say my final approach speed was 155 miles an hour. Now, as I get within the ground effect, distance above the runway, I start raising the nose because I'm going to let the airspeed gradually decrease. And when I do that, if I don't raise the nose, the airplane will continue going down at a rate that I don't want. So now I raise it, raise it, raise it, raise it. And the goal is I want to keep inch. I want to literally touch down at like 1/2 of a mile per hour. Okay, just so that you know. And there have been a couple of times when you couldn't even hear the wheel spit up, because you know the wheels aren't spinning. So as soon as they hit the pavement, they usually make a skidding noise, and that's what you'll hear if you're alongside the runway. But there's been times where if you get close enough, you can get the wind to start to move the wheel. Now I'm bragging, but my kids were on my best landing ever, and they said, "Dad, we didn't even know when you hit the ground here." But that's what you do. And so this airplane, the Delta commuter jet there, when they were coming down, they never broke this. For whatever reason, it didn't appear that they broke that descent rate sufficiently. And so they touched down or impacted that exceeded the limitations on the landing gear. And because there was a slight side wind, it might have been some side load on that, and the landing gear is not stressed as much sideways as it is forward and aft. Okay, and I'm sure that when they look at the mechanical failure here, or the mechanical contribution of that, it will have to do with the gear. But the flare is it looks like that. Why they call it a flare? I guess because if you have a flange on a piece of sheet metal or equipment of some sort where it feathers out like that, yeah, that's why they call it a flare. So anyway, so the flare is the last moments before you touch down, and it's why you study to be a pilot. That's where it's all at, is how, and that's what we judge ourselves on, probably to a fault, more than anything else, is
when you hit that sweet spot. I mean,
yeah,
I obviously, as a passenger, I've obviously, had a lot of landings, and I definitely remember the ones that are like sweet like butter. Those
exactly.
Like, oh man, that was.
And we try to do that because that's the last thing that most of the passengers will remember. I was out of Southwest, and they, back in the days when they had all the cute sayings and comebacks and all that, and one day we had a really firm landing, and the flight attendant came around right away, and she said, "That wasn't the plane's fault. That wasn't the captain's fault. That was the asphalt." And everybody laughed, of course. But anyway, well, it was part the captain's fault, but we'll that. So, all right. Any other questions, Dieter?
You know what? No, I think we covered them all. Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to reiterate what Mary's comment said. I listened to Capt Ron on audio for the entire flight, and it's helped me manage my fear and get through the flight. And that, whether that is the Fearless Flight Kit, which is absolutely designed for that, or even you have any of our audios, if you are
and now the custom visualizations, you can get it just targeted to you. We talk personally. You tell me all your fears. We have you fill out this new form. Oh, I wish we had gone over there. But anyway, we'll do next week. Yeah. We have a new survey out for actually helping you find your specific triggers, and then we integrate that into the custom visualizations as well. So anyway,
but even if you're a Fearless Flyer member, there are over 40 meditations in there
exactly
right now. Exactly. So there is a lot for you, and I think you can get in there for $37. So if you know you're going to be flying, or your flight's coming up, this would be a perfect investment, which is really probably just one meal at an airport.
Exactly. And you just keep listening and keep the variety. Like Dieter says, over 40 visualizations now, and everybody's just a little bit different, a little bit nuanced. And someone like Tom Roche that came up with the pain in your brain is not about the plane. Just one little thing will catch your hit that little switch, and you'll experience that insight that you need. So keep coming back, and thanks for all of you that have hung in there. Thanks, Dieter, and we'll be back next week again, and we'll
Don't forget Thursday this week for our
and Thursday this week. Yep. So hope I see all of you. It would make you just tickle my fancy if we could see 100 of you show up. So keep coming back.